Good morning. I am going to start with some disclosures. I receive no money from anybody for anything else except a salary, and I'm very happy with that. I never worked a day in my life because I do what I love doing. The objectives of this talk are to become familiar with neuroplasticity, because exercise is not just a luxury or something that we do on the side. Exercise actually modulates what happens in our nervous system. I am going to introduce the concept of activity-based restorative therapies, or activity-based therapy, or activity-based rehabilitation. And then at the end, if we have enough time, I will present some technology utilized to improve function, because I think that there are two different ways of improving function and neurologic and day-to-day function in individuals that have some sort of paralysis. One of them are biologics, and I believe Dr. Greenberg is going to present right after me about some biologics. And the other one is technology, which helps us achieve function. Braces, robots, machines that help transfer whatever we think into whatever we want to achieve, motor and sensory-wise. Key concepts. Activity is the basis of functional and neurologic restoration. And I'm putting the care versus the cure. Activity does care. It does not cure. But without activity, you cannot instill biologics and expect them to go where they're supposed to go and do the function that they're supposed to do. So no stem cell study will ever be done without having a good body and activity regimen, an exercise regimen that will help those cells do what they're supposed to do. Paralysis is a chronic condition. It is managed. It is not cured yet, the same like diabetes and hypertension. We do not cure any one of those. We manage it. So we do a good job with diabetes and hypertension. Exercise is part of each one of those management on top of the medications. And then I am a big hope fan. So without hope, I think that we do not have positive outlooks in life. And there is enough literature to show that if you imagine that you live a good life and a long life, you can increase your lifespan for about 7 years. So hope is a very useful concept when we're talking about wellness. Neuroplasticity is the central nervous system ability to change. It exists when we don't have an injury and we use it more, or we need to use it more when we do have a neurologic injury. There are several concepts, several ways to modify, to gather and use the plasticity. And the three of them that I'm going to talk about today are the activity-based, which is exercise, central nervous system stimulation, and I'm just going to mention the acute intermittent hypoxia because I think it's a very useful concept for people to know about. What is activity-based? Is repeated near normal activity above and below injury level. Why do we do it? In order to perfect a motor task, in order to be a good pitcher, you practice. You practice hundreds and thousands of times. When there is a neurologic injury that takes away, robs you of that ability to do the motor task, the best way to trigger the nervous system to try restoring the movement is by practicing it. Now, you can't do it without having some help. That help can come in the form of a therapist, the form of technology, in the form of your care partner that is taking you through the movement. Now, let me start with the story, or whatever. I'm not starting. I'm in the middle. In 1966, a group of scientists, exercise scientists in Dallas, decided to do the Dallas bed rest study. They took 5 20-year-olds that had no neurologic injury. They were college students, and they put them to bed rest for 3 weeks. They said, okay, this is how you're going to spend your summer vacation. 3 weeks, stay in bed, eat what you want to do, you just don't get up. After 3 weeks, when they tried to get up, they had completely impaired cardiovascular system. Their heart rate was through the roof. Their ejection fraction, their ability to push blood into the cardiovascular system was diminished. Their muscle strength was decreased. Their muscle mass was decreased. They were basically unable to function into day-to-day living. So the exercise physiologists decided to say, okay, you guys are young, let's do 8 weeks worth of intense strengthening and exercise. After those 8 weeks, the 20-year-olds that stayed in bed for 3 weeks became better in all of their cardiovascular and bone and muscle and fat content. 30 years after, the exercise physiologists took the same 5 guys. Now they were weathered by 30 years, so they were in their 50s. And, life wasn't good for all of them. Some of them had cardiovascular issues, but they couldn't put them to bed rest because that would have been not medically advisable. But what they did do, they measured the same amount of cardiovascular and bone and fat and muscle content. They looked at the difference that occurred in 30 years. Yes, they went down, but they weren't so bad as they were after those 3 weeks of bed rest. So 3 weeks of bed rest at 20 was worse than 30 years of weathered living. After 6 months of doing a progressive strengthening exercise, the 50-year-olds had better cardiovascular markers than they had when they started the bed rest at 20. The 50-year-olds were better than the 20s. Why am I talking about this? It's because you guys, paralysis induces bed rest, if you want to call it that way. It's a major source of metabolic dysfunction and disruption. And in order to reverse whatever the paralysis does and the aging, and I'm going to look at Lorraine, because was I the doctor that I told you that you went through accelerated aging? No, you weren't the doctor. I wasn't, but I could have been. I could have been, because paralysis does do accelerated aging. So on top of the fact that you have 50 years worth of paralysis, you also age. This can only be reversed by doing something proactive. So let me see, I have 20 minutes. Why activity? We already know that activity, actually, and exercise is basically a magic bullet for good health. Hippocrates said that the fountain of youth is activity. Activity helps restore muscle. It helps maintain and form new connections in the neural system. It helps with myelination and remyelination, and it helps with cell birth. But activity can be damaging. You can have overuse injuries, and then you can have what Carlos Pardo said yesterday, that you could have a stroke, a spinal stroke, if you do activity in the wrong way or exercise in the wrong way. So that's why activity has to be delivered in a very focused environment. And the focused environment is actually knowledge. It's not a place. It's not a time. It's you having the knowledge of what you have to do in order to improve the nervous system, to restore functionality in the nervous system and day-to-day functionality. We are using this ABRT in a very focused way, using 5 components plus some extras: functional electrical stimulation, locomotor gait training, weight loading, massed practice, which is the hundreds and thousands of repetition, task-specific practice. If I want to learn how to play the piano, I play the piano, I practice the piano, not the violin. And then we add a couple of other interventions that have been proven to be helpful. Oops. Okay, so now, how am I doing this? How am I starting? Oh, there we go. This is a functional electric stimulation device. It is a brace. Lorraine, you know about it. You had the walk aid. This is the Bioness. What it does, it stimulates the nerve to help with the foot drop. Not only that it helps to lift the ankle, but it also does something at the neural level. It stimulates the nerve that is innervating the muscle. In that way, the nerve does what it's supposed to do. It's just helped by the outside with technology, and the muscle doesn't lose what it's supposed to keep, which is the muscle mass. So, do I like it? Of course. We'll talk about it being reimbursed and cost. Yes, these things are $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. They are reimbursed by insurance companies. So 20 years ago when I was giving this talk, first of all, we didn't have the FES, and I wasn't giving this same talk. But we had FES bikes that were costing $20,000 that weren't covered by insurance. These days, they are. And I think I heard somebody that said that she reached out to her vocational rehab unit, and they paid for a $25,000 orthotic device. This is the bike that we were talking about, and I'm just going to show you how it works. So this gentleman is paralyzed. He's pointing to the fact that his muscle is actively contracting, is moving. So it's not that it's a passive movement, it is actual contraction. And why do I like this? I'll show you why. Well, this is a little girl that does the arms. But why do I like this? I'll show you why. Because I told you that exercise affects the nervous system. Oops. Okay. This lady is getting her legs stimulated by the FES bike. I want you to pay attention to her biceps and triceps muscles. Those are not directly stimulated. The legs, the muscles are being stimulated down here, and her hand is moving. Maybe this is not the best, but you saw the triceps. Oh, you can see the fingers. So there is no direct stimulation to the hand. She has tetraplegia. She needs stimulation to her hands. Well, that bike is delivering stimulation to the whole nervous system by just activating the muscles in the lower limbs. If nothing else, that is ensuring an adequate level of stimulation in your central nervous system, which is the spine and the brain, which is missing when you're sitting in a chair because of paralysis. If nothing else, but actually that bike shows that it increases muscle mass, it improves the bone or maintains the bone mass. So there are other benefits from using it. Locomotor gait training, this is labor-intensive but very, very helpful intervention when you need to be able to walk. It is delivered in a therapy setting. So you would have to reach out to your friendly physiatrist in order to be able to undergo locomotor gait training. Why is it important? Not necessarily for walking, although for incomplete injuries, locomotor gait training is proven to restore modified walking ability. But there are studies, and actually I was just talking to Angie from Louisville. Dr. Andrea Berman in Louisville is showing that locomotor gait training improves trunk stability. People that are not children or adults that are unable to sit unsupported are able to do so after undergoing about 60 sessions of very focused locomotor gait training. So I'm trying to make the point that activity is necessary and it does improve day-to-day function. I don't know what the Q cells are going to do. We're going to find out. But we know that activity is going to improve your day-to-day function on top of metabolic parameters. Weight loading, important. You can do it in numerous ways. At Kennedy Krieger, we have 9 different ways of helping, of training the nervous system how to walk. 9 different ways. One of them is overground. The other ones are all technology. This is one of them. But weight loading, this is a combination of weight loading and robotics with FES. Weight loading is important to maintain muscle mass. And I'm going to go to that social and psychological aspects. Being upright is very important. I've heard a lot of individuals that just want to have a standing chair because they can talk eye to eye with anybody that is interacting with. There are lower level of weight loading machinery. These are just your ellipticals that are adapted for individuals with paralysis. They are not covered by insurance, I can tell you that. Mass practice. We talked about the fact that if you want to be good at a motor skill, you have to practice that motor skill. You have to practice it hundreds or thousands of times. How do we do that? In one session of OT, we just concentrate, focus on one task. This gentleman really wanted to play with those balls and move them from one place to another. No, it has to do with the fact that it's a very good training for grasp. But you have to do it hundreds or thousands of times in one session. And your average therapy is 36 minutes if you don't go to a neurorehabilitation, spinal cord injury activity-based unit. The average duration is 36 minutes, with gait taking 357 steps and transfers, 11 of them, with 32 minutes of functional movement in the upper extremity. This is not enough, guys. It's not enough. You have to have hundreds or thousands. If you want to play, and again, I go to music because that's part of my background. If I wanted to play Diabelli, I had to practice for an hour a day until that concert. It wasn't enough to do 30 minutes every other day or twice a week. Yeah, not enough. Okay, we do task specific because specificity is important. And task specific can take the form of, in this case, standing, hundreds of repetitions, or in the previous video, it was bed mobility. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about CNS stimulation. There are numerous ways to stimulate the nervous system. I just showed you one that is a peripheral stimulation. These days, we are using numerous different ways, like transcutaneous spinal stimulation, which is exactly what this young lady is having. So she has an electrode in front, an electrode in the back. The electrode is stimulating, is raising the amount of activity, so that big machine over there is doing the stimulation. It's raising the amount of activity that occurs into this, what we call central pattern generators, which is the microchip in the lower spine that helps you walk. So there is enough very good evidence, and you probably have seen Dr. Harkimas or Reggie Edgerton's or the Mayo Clinic study showing that the implanted stimulator that helps individuals that are paralyzed walking. Well, this is the pre-implant. Sometimes you can achieve the same with just having surface stimulation, raise the level of activity into those neurons that are at the bottom of the spine, or at the hand level, if that's what the desired neurologic effect or functional effect is. And you don't have to have an implanted stimulator because that's still in research. This can be done with smart therapists and a $3,000 machine in any neurorehabilitation unit that knows activity-based. And this is not, I didn't bring the videos in which you have an individual that doesn't move anything. You hook them to this very simple machine, if it's in the hands of skilled individuals, and they start moving their leg when the stimulation is going on. Acute intermittent hypoxia, it's a different way of doing neuroplastic changes. So let me see, I am featuring, I believe, yes, we are featuring a bunch of our therapists over here. So what clinical trials showed that individuals with incomplete injury, so they have some movement, but it's not enough to walk fast or walk well. If we decrease the amount of oxygen for a very short period of times to 9%, it's the equivalent of going up on Kilimanjaro. So you have to have good cardiovascular background. If you have congestive heart failure or COPD, any lung disease, probably you are not a candidate for this. But doing this 30 minutes on and off of hypoxia followed by motor training improves the ability to perform that motor task. In this case, most of the literature shows improvement in hand function and improvement in walking. Improvement in walking in distance, speed, and quality. Why? It has to do with the fact that the hypoxia actually liberates a bunch of neurotransmitters. We are all dependent on chemicals. There are about 9 different classes of neurotransmitters, and whoever has spasticity management or neuropathic pain management or depression management is taking medications to modulate those neurotransmitters. So it's not that it's unheard of, it's just a different way of doing it. And then let's see, I have 4 minutes. Okay, let's see if I can get this one. It's only because, I might not get this one. Well, I'm not going to tell you about it. But if you Google fist bump with Obama, you're going to see what we can do technology-wise. So it's the video of, oh, look at that. Somebody's helping me. Thank you. Okay, well, we don't want to see her. Vitamin C is good, antioxidant, okay. Here we go. So that individual cannot move anything from the neck down. He has a little plug into his brain. For now, it's just in the brain, and he's controlling with his thoughts that robotic arm. And it's only with his thoughts. If you're going to see, and I want to get to that point, Obama talks a lot. What can I say? I don't know if it's the one, but well, anyway, what they do is they bump fist, and it's one of those exploding fists because we have the technology right now to insert sensory and motor receptors into the cortical and sensory projection into the brain and collect the information and make a robot move. They're definitely talking too much. Okay, let's go. This is the implanted spinal cord stimulator. I kind of alluded to it. I'm not going to put it on, but, well, let's see. We have 2 minutes. I'd like to. Okay, so that is an individual that was completely paralyzed, could not move at all. A Medtronic implanted stimulator, similar to whatever is used to control pain, is being implanted into the spine, and then you get to be a mouse that walks. No, it's implanted into the spine and stimulates. This is Dr. Cortin. He did study everything from the mouse all the way to the monkey, and now is at the level of human. So this is a person that cannot move his legs without that stimulator. He's walking independently. So in between the stem cells and technology and exercise, the cure for paralysis is closer. Okay, I need to move to the next one. Let's see if I have a couple of, whoever is helping me, make the universe move. Next. I can't make it go. Okay. I'm just going to show you a couple of other robotics that are helping us. We have robotics to help arm and legs. We started with the legs. This robotic is helping basically the shoulder and the elbow. Why do we need robotics? Again, for hundreds and hundreds of stimulations. This is a simpler robotic, if you see. It just supports the hand, so the patient is able to reach into the space to perform some skills that are needed for a young individual that goes to college. This is an myoelectric brace that gets the input from the muscle. So if you have a little bit of a movement, this brace amplifies it. This is again a approved for use at home, not necessarily only in therapy. The myoma, let's see what else is there. This is a robotic hand device. Amadeo helps with training in finger performance, and I think I'm done because I want to be on time. Exercise is the fountain of youth, and it's actually a very proven way of gaining day-to-day a neurologic function. Thank you.